Hello everyone, my name is Wesley and I will be discussing Saga. So, Saga takes place in a galaxy torn apart by war between the kingdoms of Landfall and Wreath, which are neighboring planets. Well, Wreath is a moon, but they're neighbors. And their war has spread all across the galaxy, and the story mainly follows Alana and Marco, who are both deserters on opposite sides of the war, and they fall in love and have a child together, and that's where we come in. So we basically follow Alana and Marco as they flee the planet Cleve where they met, so they can escape the war and the people pursuing them, and find a safe place to raise their daughter. But the story also follows some of the people in pursuit of them, one of which is the Robot Prince, who the Robot Kingdom is allied with Landfall, Alana's homeworld, and the Robot Prince is tasked with finding and killing Alana and Marco so he can return home to start a family of his own. And we also follow a mercenary known as the Will, hired by Wreath, Marco's homeworld, and the Will needs the reward money so he can buy a 6-year-old slave girl's freedom. So we have these three plot lines all revolving around Alana and Marco's union, which the leadership of Landfall and Wreath, neither of them want. Probably, I'm not sure if it's explicitly stated, but probably because they don't want their populations to start viewing the enemies in a humanized way, and also it's implied that the war is probably beneficial for those in power. So anyways, we have these three storylines going on, and the motivations of all the main characters is taking care of taking care of a child, some kind of paternal instinct, and that's interesting because they all have this shared motivation, but that's what pits them against each other. And the Robot Prince, later on, his wife informs him she's pregnant, and so that increases his urgency to find Alana and Marco so he can return home for his child's birth. And the Will is, I guess, less so a paternal relationship to the slave girl, but he can't. He won't tolerate her being held in captivity and being abused, so he takes that role to take care of her, or at least gain her freedom. So that's interesting, that shared motivation pits them against each other, even though they don't technically interact in this first volume, but I'm pretty sure that's where it's leading to. So yeah, another thing I found really interesting in Saga was this emphasis on hybrids and combinations found throughout the whole book. The main one being that it takes place in a galaxy that's advanced and has spacefaring technology, but it also has traditional type magic like spells and enchanted items and ghosts. So these two things aren't normally in the same world, and Saga joins them together in a really interesting way. Another hybrid, very prominent in the book, is that almost all the characters are crosses between humans and animals. The people of Landfall have dragon-like wings, and the people of Wreath have horns based off of various earth creatures. Marco has ram horns. and but there's all different kinds. There's spider people and monkey people and alligator people, and then there's the robot people, which are also interesting because combinations between humans and robots are often depicted as more robot, I think, but they're very human in Saga. You know, we see them in sexual acts and using the bathroom, and they're very humanized and, you know, filled with just as much emotion as any other characters, so they're very human. And the only non hybrid characters that are just humans are the Will and the Slave Girl, which may be why the Will feels or takes on that paternal-ish role for the Slave Girl. So another prominent hybrid or combination is, you know, what sets the whole story in motion, Alana and Marco's union, which is like figurative joining of the two worlds, but with the birth of their child, Hazel, they also have a literal combination between their two peoples. And Hazel, the color is a greenish brown color, and that's kind of neat because green and brown are basically the color schemes that make up Alana and Marco. And Alana's got the green accent, Marco's got the brown accent. So that's neat. And Hazel is also kind of a hybrid between character and storyteller because she is also the narrator of this story. Her narration must be from when she's an adult or a teenager close to adulthood, but definitely had time to reflect on her life and her parents' lives. So in that, like, kind of frames the story a little bit. So yeah, and while hybrids and combinations are very prominent in the story, severance is also an important motif because that is in a way also what kind of incites the story, because it is Marco and Alana's disillusionment with war that causes them to desert, and which leads to them falling in love, or I'm not sure which happened first. But they become disillusioned with war, and they both abandon their kingdom, so they sever themselves from their former lives entirely. And that's kind of neat too, because they're on the planet Cleve, which you know, is a synonym for sever. So yeah. And one last thing I would like to talk about is, I'm not exactly sure what the right wording for this would be, but a quality that Saga has that I really like is this kind of sophisticated crudeness it has to it. Like, it's very sexual, it's very violent. You know, it kind of has the shock value elements of the independent comics we went over, like heavy metal. You know, it's got that kind of feel to it, but it also has a lot of substance behind all that shock value stuff. And so, like, a few examples of what I'm talking about. The very first page, you know, Alana says, am I shitting? It feels like I'm shitting. And then, of course, we find out, you know, she's giving birth. So, that's entertaining and neat. But I want to compare that to a later scene. Not that one. But later, just before the robot prince learns his wife is pregnant, he is also taking a shit. So we have bodily functions going on leading into, parenthood, which is weird, and we see that twice in the story, which I think is interesting. But another one that I found really, I don't know what the right word for it is. So we have when the will arrives on Sextillion, he's greeted by these ladies, which are just heads on legs. So the mouth and vagina are now sharing the same space. So they are just reduced to total sexual objectification. And we've got this full page spread on them. So this is really introducing us to what we can find on Sextillion. So let's compare that scene or compare that page to when we are introduced to the slave girl. So you can see that she's kind of presented in the same way as the ladies at the beginning. It's a full page layout. It's full figure shot. Background colors are very similar. She's also greeting the will, but it's a stark contrast as well to what we're shown earlier. Primarily, it's a downward angle. We are looking down on her, like we're supposed to, feel sorry for her. You recognize that she is in a vulnerable position. Whereas the other activities depicted on Sextillion, it's all it's eye level and maybe slightly above. I think the ladies, it's they are slightly towering over our point of view, and us as the readers are standing over the slave girl. So, also depicting innocence, I guess. So it's strong similarities and contrast at the same time, and it's a sophisticated crudeness, I guess. One more example is the scene where the stalk is killed by the robot prince. They just kind of have this chance encounter, and it's almost humorous in a way. The stalk, who's made out to be a very dangerous mercenary or bounty hunter or whatever she is, and it's just this humorous exchange, and all of a sudden she's just shot with almost no reasoning behind it, and it's kind of funny that's the way she goes out, but it includes in it this shot of what the robot prince is thinking. We see it on his monitor. I don't know if other people can see that or if it's just a clue into his mind, But we, the readers, see it and know he's thinking about his child and his family. And so this humorous, tragic end to the stalk, has this paternal fear behind it, this totally understandable paternal fear behind it. And so, and her death is treated so lightly at the end of this chapter. But yeah, sophisticated crudeness, I guess, is what I'm getting at. That's pretty much my time. Thank you for listening. That was my thoughts on Saga. Thank you.